Hey ladies and gentlemen, we are now live. Welcome to the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live from NGC Studios here in Southern Florida. And as always, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Social media contact info as usual. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SamDB_NGC, hashtag Whitfield Report, hashtag Sam's Savages 2. You can follow me on Gab, simply at Sam Whitfield, and you can go like the Facebook page at facebook.com/Whitfield Report, and of course, just by going to my website at thesamwhitfield.com, you can find the links to all that stuff and more there. Wouldn't it be interesting, though, if I opened up this show and said that I wasn't happy to have you? What if I did just the exact opposite? And, flipped you guys the bird and told everyone off? No one really would expect that. That's a, it's funny the way podcasts and radio shows go. When hosts say they're happy to have you listening. Well, obviously we are, because, we've built a whole show around attracting listeners/viewers. So, I don't even know why I brought that up. It just kind of seemed like a observation to make about podcasting, just in general. Also, you can join our live YouTube chat if you're on the YouTube channel. Then obviously you can log in with your YouTube account and join the live chat. So far we have Gabe and Jeff in the chat. It says there's only one viewer right now, but I don't think that's right, because sometimes more than one person will comment and it'll say that there's only one viewer on the thing. But anywho, how are you doing tonight, ladies and gentlemen? So tonight's show is a topic that I've been meaning to get into for a while now. I've discussed this a few times in the past on my previous show, the Whitfield Analysis. I think it's been 5 years since I've discussed this topic, but I figure it's time for a refresh. Tonight's topic is why millennials are so liberal in general, or more specifically, why I think millennials are more liberal, and why, there are conservative millennials, but why we're seen as more a minority in the political view. And I decided to do this topic for this week because I called into the Nick DiPaolo show. And for those of you who don't know, Nick DiPaolo is a very well-known stand-up comedian who is, I wouldn't even really say he's full-blown conservative. I would say he's more of conservative/libertarian like I am. But, the media and the left, they like to portray him as being like an alt-right, stand-up comedian. And, anyone who is basically semi-conservative is considered alt-right by the left. But anyway, Nick actually just launched his new podcast this week on Monday. And after getting kicked off of Sirius satellite radio because he said something politically incorrect, so he launched a new podcast on Patreon this past week, and it's pretty good. There are 2 free episodes per week, though, and I called in on his show on Wednesday because he was talking about a story of liberal bias on college campuses and how the left has just absolutely infected college campuses, for the past 40 years. And so I wanted to call in to talk about liberal bias on college campuses from my perspective. When are Gabe asked, when are you and Nick getting married? Well, I mean, I'm already taken. I'm saving myself for when producer Canberra comes back. That's how that goes, Gabe. But anyway, yeah, little inside joke between the savages and I, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, I called into Nick's show to discuss bias on college campuses, and I think it was a pretty good chat. So here's the clip from the Nick DePaulo Show, episode 3, when I called in earlier this week. Cut number 1, go.
Let's go to Sam in Florida. Sam, college students want to discuss life on liberal campus. What's up?
Hey, Nick. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing, Sam? What's it like? Are you a college-age guy?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of yours, and first of all, I wanted to let you know that not all of the millennials are brainwashed, liberal retards. A lot of us are sick of this political correctness.
No, hold on. No, you're right. I never said all, but when I read polls, and I've read them many times, where almost 40% of millennials have a problem with the First Amendment and free speech and are in favor of curbing it, it's too many. That's too many. Way too many. But
one thing before I continue playing this clip, I should have asked him, and I didn't. I should have asked him where he got the 40% number from, because I don't think that's. I mean, I'm sure it's true in some of the polls, but I mean, a lot of these polls, it really depends on what you read. And so the one thing I should have asked him, and I didn't, was where he saw that number. And I'll get to why that's important later on in the show. But continuing on.
But you're right. Not all millennials are PC pussies. I agree with that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I hear you. It kind of makes me depressed because I feel like I'm in the minority and I'm alone. But it gets ridiculous because I had to take a college English course a few years ago, and they made me write a paper on the effects of global warming. Now, keep in mind, this was for an English class, not for like class or anything like that.
Right.
And it's also hard as hell to start a college Republicans organization on campus too, just because of the bureaucracy of the administration.
Right.
So,
but your point being that you're saying there's a good number of you millennials on campus who don't buy into this PC horseshit. But don't you think on the average college campus you're outnumbered? Safe to say.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but I'm one of the people who, I'm willing to speak out about my conservative opinions because I really don't care. But there are a lot more millennials out there who are more conservative libertarianish who, don't want to say anything because they think that their grades will get dinged or whatever. So,
well, how can
which is also possibly true.
Okay, but can I just say, and I understand that, but if you don't say anything because you're afraid your grades you're being intimidated into fucking silence. So fight back, whether it's keying the professor's car or something. Do something. You can't just keep your mouth shut. You have to make it known your professors are fucking with you. Otherwise, this is going to go on. This is how we got to this point. Threaten the fucking chancellor's cat. Do something.
Or inviting Apollo to do a comedy, stand-up night on your campus. That would be another way to intimidate them too.
Yeah.
To fight back against the left, I should say.
I'll do it. What's the college?
State College of Florida. It's a community campus, but I know it's tough. Not even Jerry Seinfeld wants to do campuses.
That's why I said this about millennials, and again, not all of yous, but most of yous. I say, congratulations, millennials. You're the first generation that finds Seinfeld too fucking edgy, you pussies. I mean, hey, who uses cotton balls? I don't know, but cotton's picked by black people, Jerry. You better be careful. All right, Sam, I gotta go. Your phone's coming in and out, but keep your chin up out there, and if your professor gives you any guff, kick her in the sandals for me. All righty.
That was my big debut on the Nick DiPaolo show, and that's what kind of prompted tonight's show topic. Why are millennials seen as being so liberal when clearly not all millennials are liberal? Well, first off, we have to actually define what a millennial is, because I find that the definition of a millennial tends to differ from source to source. Now, I found a pretty good definition from the Pew Research Center, and I want to pull this up. So let's see if this will work. I know that my screen was kind of the software was kind of acting funny when I wanted to project the screen. So let's see if this works. Let's see. Also, to Jeff, I'm sorry, Jeff, but I am stealing material. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not stealing material. I'm stealing listeners and audience members from you know who. That's what I'm doing. I'm not stealing material. So, but anyway. Alright, okay. There we go, it's working again. So, this article from the Pew Research Center is very helpful. And for those who are just tuning in, we're discussing why millennials are so liberal, and as I explained, first we need to define what a millennial is. So there was this article that came out in March of this year, actually, headline from Pew Research Center, Defining Generations, Where Millennials End and Post-Millennials Begin. Okay. For decades, Pew Research Center has been committed to measuring public attitudes on key issues and documenting differences in those attitudes across demographic groups. One lens often employed by researchers at the center to understand these differences is that of generation. Let's see. Real quick. Can I put this into reader mode? Yes, I can. Generations provide the opportunity to look at Americans both by their place in the life cycle, whether a young adult, a middle-aged parent, or a retiree, and by their membership in a cohort of individuals who were born at a similar time. As we've examined it in past work, generational cohorts give researchers a tool to analyze changes in views over time. They can provide a way to understand how different formative experiences, such as world events and technological, economic, and social shifts, interact with the life cycle and an aging process to shape people's views of the world. While younger and older adults may differ in their views at any given moment, generational cohorts allow researchers to examine how today's older adults felt about a given issue when they themselves were young, as well as to describe how the trajectory of views might differ across generations. Okay. So that's just all, intro. Pew Research Center has been studying the millennial generation for more than a decade. But as we enter 2018, it's become clear to us that it's time to determine a cutoff point between millennials and the next generation. Turning 37 this year, the oldest millennials are well into adulthood, and they first entered adulthood before today's youngest adults were born. Okay, so right there from the Pew Research Center, we do have a clear, we have a clear number. In order to keep the millennial generation analytically meaningful, and to begin looking at what might be unique about the next cohort, Pew Research Center will use 1996 as the last birth year for millennials for our future work. Anyone born between 1981 and 1996, ages 22 to 37 in 2018, will be considered a millennial. And anyone born from 1997 onward will be part of a new generation. Now, folks, the reason why I wanted to look this up is I've heard various things. I've heard that millennials, that they count anyone born from 1990 to 1999, which is only 10 years, which doesn't seem that big. But then I've heard, people going back to 1979, 1980 as the defining, start date for the millennial generation. But I think 81 to 96 is actually a pretty, good. It's actually, I think, a fair cross date, right? And baby boomers, my God, the baby boomers had they had a large generation gap from 1945 to 1979 or something like that. So, generations are interesting things to define. But, anyway, getting back to the article. Since the oldest among this rising generation are just turning 21 this year, and most are still in their teens, we think it's still too early to give them a name, though the New York Times asked readers to take a stab, and we look forward to watching as conversations among researchers, the media, and the public help a name for this generation take shape. In the meantime, We will simply call them post-millennials until a common nomenclature occurs. Oh yeah, that's that's super creative. Generational cutoff points aren't an exact science. Yeah, no shit. I just went over that. They should be viewed primarily as tools allowing for the kinds of analysis detailed above, but their boundaries are not arbitrary. Generations are often considered by their spans, but again, there is no agreed upon formula for how long that span should be. At 16 years, 1981 to 1996, our working definition of millennials will be equivalent in age span to their preceding generation. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. By this definition, both are shorter than the lifespan of the baby boomers, 19 years. The only generation officially designated by the U.S. censorship, by the U.S. Census Bureau, based on the famous surge in post-World War II births and a significant decline in birth rates after 1964. Let's see. No, I don't. No, it's not. I don't think you're baby boomers. The Pew Research Center does. Yeah, let's. I'm just going through the comments. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Unlike the boomers, there's comparatively no definitive thresholds by which later generational boundaries are defined. But for analytical purposes, we believe 1996 is a meaningful cutoff between millennials and post-millennials for a number of reasons, including key political, economic, and social factors that define the millennial generation's formative years. Let's see. Most millennials were born between the age of 5 and 21 when the 9/11 terrorist attacks shook the nation, and many were old enough to comprehend the historical significance of that moment, while most post-millennials have little or no memory of that event. Okay, that is fair. Millennials also grew up in the shadow of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which sharpened broader views of the parties and contributed to the intense political polarization that shapes the current political environments. Yeah, well, we all know that that's only partially true. Let's see. And most millennials were between 12 and 27 during the 2008 election, where the force for the youth vote became part of the political conversation and helped elect the first black president. Oh, which, I was not part of that, of that specific coalition, by the way. No, I was part of the rebellion once that whole Obama 08 thing, came into full swing. Let's see. I'm calling BS on that too, Mike. But this is Pew Research. They're pretty liberal, but when it comes to purely demographic information, there's not many good sources on it. Wikipedia, which anyone can edit, is shady as fuck, as the kids. Let's see. Millennials are children who never grew up, and I'm a millennial. Yeah, well, so is... Well, I agree with you, Ludwig. Look, by this definition too, I think John Neary is a millennial too. I think, I think, he who shall not be named, I don't know if he's a millennial, but he acts more of like a post-millennial. So, yeah. Oh, I was hip to Obama back in, at age 14. So Ludwig, you and I are a lot closer in age than I initially thought then. But anyway, let's see. Okay. Okay, added to that is the fact that millennials are the most racially and ethnically diverse adult generation in the nation's history. Yet the next generation, those currently 21 or younger, are even more diverse. Well, I mean, yeah, but that's, the Pew Research Center is defining that by American, standards, which I guess is what we are going off on, technically, but that is kind of a cop-out, though, because obviously, generations tend to, race mix over time. Like, I remember, back when, well, I don't remember, but I remember my grandfather telling me that, back when he was growing up in the 20s and, 30s, even different European, nationalities. There were stigmas out, Italians dating, Irish guys and Irish and vice versa, and so in terms of ethnic diversity, there's always been ethnic diversity. So that is kind of a weird thing. But yeah. Beyond politics, most millennials came of age and entered the workforce facing the height of an economic recession. As is well documented, many millennials' life choices, future earnings, and entrance to adulthood may have been shaped by this recession in a way that may not be the case for the younger counterparts. The long-term effects of this slow start for millennials will be a factor in American society for decades. Yeah, there's that, but there's also the fact that, a lot of the protest, millennials, they don't want to get a job either. Technology in particular, the rapid evolution of how people communicate and interact is another generation-shaping consideration. Now, this is true too. Let's see. Okay, Ludwig is saying it's 1984, the cutoff date, and this article is from the Pew Research is saying it's 1981. So, which is it? Yeah, see, that's Alyssa's right. I did say it was 1981, but this is why this whole millennial generation thing is so hard to pinpoint. You'll find one article that says it's 1984, and then one that says it's 1981. Okay, Ludwig says, we were brought up in the best media, public education, and pop culture propaganda that money can buy. Of course my generation is intellectually stunted. I will talk about that in a sec. I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm gonna see how much longer this goes. Holy crap, this goes on for a while. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Going back to where I was. Technology, in particular, the rapid evolution of how people communicate and interact, is another generation shaping consideration. Baby boomers. In this progression, what is unique for post-millennials is that all of the above have been part of their lives from the start, in terms of technology. The iPhone launched in 2007 when the oldest post-millennials were 10. By that time, they were in their teens. Okay, okay. Now there's some stuff about politics and whatnot. Okay, so, I think we're, I just wanted to pull up that article mainly to, find out what the, parameters of the millennial generation. But what I want to get to, more specifically in regards to why millennials are so liberal is for a reason that that Ludwig pointed out. There are a few things that Ludwig pointed out in the comments. Ludwig made a comment where he said a few minutes ago, we were brought up in the best media, public education, and pop culture propaganda money can buy. Of course, my generation is intellectually stunted. And this brings me back to, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Breitbart, when he discussed something called the Frankfurt School. Now, the Frankfurt School was basically a bunch of communists after post-World War II who basically immigrated here to the United States, and they knew that unlike countries like Russia or Eastern Europe, in the rest of Eastern Europe, they knew that communism could not be, installed here by means of a pure hostile takeover. They knew that that wasn't going to work. So, what they did, quite ingeniously, is they started to slowly but surely get into the universities, get into the media, and a lot of them got into Hollywood. And by virtue of the fact that they were now in control of the popular culture and educational centers, they were able to basically craft a narrative of being pro-American is being racist, individuality, well, that's hurtful towards those who have less. Basically, they took communism and they took the ideological part of communism, watered it down, and called it cultural Marxism. Well, that's how we define it now, but they call it social justice, and which is much different, folks, than civil rights. Do not confuse the two, and that is something that the alt-right, the real alt-right, has tried to conflate. They've tried to conflate civil rights, the fight for equality for African Americans, with this social justice snowflake wave. But bottom line, going back to my phone call from this week with Nick DiPaolo, like I said, I would be curious to see where he got the number that 40% of millennials are against the First Amendment. I really am curious as to where he read that, so maybe I'll tweet him that. But anyway, millennials, I would say that millennials are liberal not because of the fact that we decided to be liberal. We were indoctrinated into being liberal by default in terms of, generationally speaking. Not all of us, but a lot of us were liberal because we grew up, with teachers who were part of that baby boomer generation of left-wing thinkers. And, or even if they weren't liberal themselves or left-wing, most of the textbooks, for U.S. history and, world events that a lot of millennials read, K through 12 and in college, is written from a far left stance. So, education is a big part of it. Big Hollywood and the media is another big part of why so many of millennials are default liberal. And, another big part of that has to do with the coast. The coasts. Basically New York, Los Angeles, Miami, basically the big metropolitan areas demographically are almost all liberal. Okay. Let's see. Subliminal messaging bypasses the short-term memory, hits right at the psychological level, and shoots directly into the long-term memory. Ludwig, you're absolutely right, and that's partially why the attention spans for millennials are so. That's why the attention span for most millennials, not all of them, but a lot of them are so, bad. Now, that's starting to change a little bit because I think the Joe Rogan podcast and, other podcasts like this one, and I hate to say this, but Alex Jones and Steven Crowder, for sure. I think podcasts are really helping millennials and live streams like this. I think it is starting to help us get our long-term focus back. So, I definitely do think that things are starting to change for the better. But I do think that, subliminal liberal messaging is a big part of it. And so, for older conservatives to say that, the millennial generation has chosen to be liberal is simply not a, that's simply a simply a falsehood. Let's see. The subliminal messaging started in the 50s, right when they invented televisions. That's what MJF says. Well, yeah, that's true to a certain extent. To a certain extent, MJF. But think about this too, because I've heard the whole thing about, television and the internet and all that being subliminal messaging, and that is true to a certain extent. But when you take away the people who run things and who run the programming, what is television? What is a computer? What is the internet? What is social media? It's all a tool, right? They're all tools. They're all things. And so the thing that I think I've done successfully, and that many on the right are starting to figure out, and I'll get back to this in a sec, but I think we are starting to find out how to, use these tools toward our advantage to spread our side of the story. So if you want to think about it, maybe maybe somewhere I'm subliminally sending subliminal messages to someone else out there. The other thing is, and I hate to say this, but I've talked about this before, and this is a big part of, I think, why so many millennials are liberal by default too. And many conservatives are not going to like what I'm about to say, but I think it's very, very important. The sad truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, is not all. There were a lot of the sad truth of the matter is conservatives did not do a good job of reaching out to millennials in general. For the most part, they did a pretty crappy job up until now. Right? It really wasn't until Steven Crowder really hit the scene a few years ago. Same with Ben Shapiro. It really wasn't until younger people like Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, people from our own generation, started to kind of rise up and become a voice for, conservatism in this new generation, that we really, the conservatism really had an impact on millennials. Meanwhile, the left was always focused on using kids as a propaganda tool / demographic for Obama, right? Obama was the first candidate to get major youth support because the left really played upon that youthful, energy that Obama had. They did it quite well. Meanwhile, the Republicans, trotted out, old man John McCain, who, I'm not saying anything to, be overtly cruel to McCain. I'm just saying the perception, back in 2008 was that Obama was the new, fresh, hip, young face of a generation, and meanwhile, the Republican Party was just the party of old, unelectable white men who, had major issues. And for years and years and years, conservatives, establishment conservatives, I should say, did not really care about millennials. They still don't. I don't think And, we saw that, unfortunately, again in 2012. I think there was a bit more of a youth pushback in 2012 on the conservative side. I think you were certainly starting to see it. But again, the GOP once again went along with, Mitt Romney, who was, well, I'm sure he's a good guy personally. He was a milquetoast candidate. He was boring. He was uninteresting. He was, he was too polite. He was like your, it was like again, he was another case of, he was someone who, might, run if he were like your great uncle or your grandfather. He had no appeal towards the youth whatsoever. Now, there were one big thing that I think that's been helping conservatives attract more millennials and more post-millennials, if we want to use this term, is the fact that under Obama, the far left was allowed to go absolutely bat crap crazy with their social justice antics, to the point where even a lot of millennials are getting sick of this stuff. Most average millennials, right? You see the media, talking more diversity on college campuses. They're talking about this generation being more open to transgenderism and whatnot. Well, that's only because the media is, the mainstream media, I should say, is focused on what they want to focus on, right? But there are conservative millennials out there, like myself, who, I've had to build this show up and this podcast up on my own. I've really not had any, opportunities for big sponsorship, other than, maybe a few advertisers at one point, and I turned that down for, reasons I won't go into. But, I've done my show, independently, for the most part. So as Steven Crowder, up until he, did CRTV. So did Ben Shapiro. All of the big millennial conservative media has basically also been independent media. None of the big news companies, with the exception of Fox, will really have millennials on, and even then, the types of millennials they are having to choose on, i.e. Tommy Lahren, isn't, there's been a big backlash against Tommy from other millennial conservatives, and that may be another topic for another time. Okay, let's see. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be having a guest here on in just a few minutes. Adam Hill, my co-host of the American Watchman podcast and my co-editor of American Watchman, the publication, is going to be coming on to discuss the left's cultural violence in this second hour. So I'm just going to text him my Skype ID real quick and whatnot. But in the meantime, what do I get? If you're still watching, you don't have to answer me right now. You can choose to, not answer, or you can message me on Twitter later. But I am curious. How old are you? So I'm just texting out of my Skype ID right now. So, I wish I had, this is another reason I need, commercial breaks. I do need, something I can kind of insert when I need to take a break to do show organizational stuff like this. But, hey, I'm also a professional, so I'm monologuing through all this, so. So, let's see. So he'll be on to discuss the loves cultural violence, and he's a great guy as well. By the way, I do want to take this opportunity. I suppose as long as we're doing commercials, I might as well do some shameless self-promotion myself. If you like this show, and you would like to support the show financially, well, first, the biggest way you can support the show is by giving me a like and subscribing and sharing this YouTube video with everyone else you know. And of course, you can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. But if you are also inclined to financially support the show, you can become a patron of the Whitfield Report as well by joining the Patreon page. And for as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show. And there are different tiers that you can where you can basically sign up to become a patron. The first tier is for obviously $1 a month, and you'll be able to get bonus content. Then for $5 a month, you'll get a public shout out and write up on my blog, and then you can also. Then for $10, you can hang out with me on a Google Hangout once per month, and we have 11 spots, 11 spots still open for that. For $15 a month, if you have a business, you can advertise. For $20 a month, you can become an executive producer. And then as Oddwood points out, for $50 a month, Sam will spoon with you legally. Yeah, I'm sure if that became part of the deal, I'm sure that there are some people who would sign up for that. I wonder what people do for I wonder what I would have to offer for $100 a month for some people. But anywho, anywho, that's how Patreon is laid out. So please go to patreon.com/Whitfield and sign up for one of these 4 levels. And, if you feel generous, you can, custom pledge me as well without selecting a reward as well. So, there's that. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my guest. Well, first, we have to get him on the show. But as I mentioned, Adam Hill will be joining me. He's one of my co-editors here at American Watchman. And he and I will be chatting about cultural Marxism and the left's propension for violence. So, okay, I just accepted his invite, so let's see if oh, okay. Alright then. Okay, let's see how this goes. I'm ringing him. We're doing the... Hey, Adam.
How's it going?
Good. Welcome to the Whitfield report, my friend. You're live on air right now.
Hold on, let me get some lights on here.
Sure thing, my friend.
It kind of sucks living in a hotel room.
Yeah. Well, we'll give you a chance to introduce yourself to the audience and whatnot. Oh, also, I probably should set up my app so they can actually see your so that they can see your camera too.
Alrighty.
So, alright. So, ladies and gentlemen, joining me here for the next hour is my co-editor and co-host of the American Watchman Roundtable podcast, Mr. Adam Hill. And Adam, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh, no problem. So, Adam, we were supposed to be hosting the American Watchman Roundtable podcast, and 2 of our hosts decided to, cancel on us tonight because of other events, and it was your turn to host the program.
Yeah.
Tonight, so that just kind of figures that they cancel on the night when you were bound to host. But first off, I know you pretty well, but just for the audience, do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself and how you got started in politics and all that jazz?
I can definitely do that. So, my name's Adam. I'm based out of Colorado. I'm a big-time constitutional conservative, a big Rand Paul fan. I'd say my issues that I'm most passionate about are those involving the Second Amendment and free speech. I've always been a conservative my whole life, but I never really got into it hardcore until Obama won the 2008 election. That kind of catapulted me into it, and then I got even more involved after he won again in 2012. So,
yeah. So, Adam and I kind of. It's funny because out of all the board members of American Watchmen, out of all the editors, I think Adam and I are probably most similar in terms of I'm a Second Amendment guy and I'm a free speech guy as well. So I think Adam and I have that in common, the most. I know that the other guys are, Josh is more into foreign policy and Gabe is into economics, and Supreme Court stuff and all that, but a lot of that sometimes tends to go over my head. I'm more of a free speech guy myself, but anyway, Adam, so you wanted to talk violence that among the left, and I have to say I'm ecstatic to have you on because this is one of my favorite topics. So so I'm done ranting about this topic, and I was talking about why millennials are so liberal by default. That was my topic earlier tonight, but we're shifting gears. So what stories do you have for us about violent leftism?
Well, of course, this happened a few weeks ago. I'm sure everybody knows about Mad Max, Maxine Waters, basically advocating for violence against Trump officials and conservatives in a very passionate speech she gave. That was completely appalling to actually see a politician advocating for violence against her own constituents, basically, who are the American people. Of course, their most recent story was these two teenage boys at a Whataburger, and a guy came up and basically ripped one of their "Make America Great Again" hats off and threw his entire drink in their face and walked off with their hat. I mean, this is basically what the left has become. I'm sure we've all seen this, especially since Trump got elected on Inauguration Day. This is a while back. I mean, they were literally throwing fire bombs in the streets, destroying businesses, blocking highways, and randomly assaulting conservatives. I mean, this is what the left has become.
Yeah, and Maxine Waters, she's feeding the fire for all this. Well, I mean, I'm sure I think I may have shared this story with you that I found a few weeks ago, but I don't know if you're into stand-up comedy at all, but there's this conservative / libertarian comedian named Nick DiPaolo who I'm a big fan of, and Nick a few weeks ago was in a comedy club and he got assaulted by a feminist who basically went up to him, and I guess her dad was saying what a big fan he was of Nick, but then I guess he said my daughter wants to punch you in the face, and right as soon as he said face, the daughter punched him and gave him like a pretty big black eye. So that was a bit of a news story as well. But Adam, I guess, why do you think the left is so violent these days? What makes these people tick?
The left has been violent since the civil rights movement in the 1960s that their entire party voted against. I mean, like that's what they do. Especially, well, they weren't as bad as now the modern day Democratic Party that we're seeing that basically Obama gave rise to. I'd probably say Clinton was the last classic Democrat president that we had. When Obama got elected, that started the modern liberal movement, and who now believes that they have the right to suppress any kind of speech that they disagree with, and they have especially since Trump got elected, they feel they have a right to actually physically assault those who disagree with them. That's just, I mean, it baffles me, and I don't understand why they're doing it, but it's kind of ironic that people who are calling the right fascists are the very fascists themselves. I mean, if you look at fascism, it's all about suppressing ideas and attacking those that you disagree with. I mean, look what the Nazis did. The Nazis tore down statues and stuff they didn't like.
Oh.
They burned artwork. They burned books. They attacked college campuses, just like the left is doing nowadays. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the way, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing. One of our listeners in the chat room, Gabe. He's a humorous guy. He said, Clinton was the only black president today. So, yeah, that's.
I can agree with that.
I've heard that line before regarding Bill Clinton, and yeah, I mean it. I think a lot of this stuff started, before Trump got elected. In fact, I think a lot of this, leftist rioting with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and the Occupy movement back in 2012, I think a lot of that it is partially responsible for why Trump got elected, president as well. In my opinion, I think one of Obama's biggest failure, and there are many, but I think at the very least what he could have done as president and he didn't do was to say, hey guys, knock it off, stop rioting. And he didn't do any of that. He didn't try to dissuade, these Occupy Wall Street movement people from, burning and looting Portland in 2012 or, rioting in New York City. He kind of instigated it more than anything else. So your thoughts?
Do what?
Oh, I was gonna ask your thoughts. Sorry, we kind of had like a. All I was saying is I think Obama kind of instigated this, or not really instigated it, but let this happen by not calling out his supporters who were doing this.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Obama gave voice to all these movements. Obama did nothing to unite the American people. Nothing.
Yeah, and one of our other audience members just commented, the left needs this type of unrest. They normally thrive in it. Which is true too. I would certainly like to believe that there are still liberals out there who are open to civil conversation and open to civilized debate. I think Dave Rubin is a prime example of that. But for the most part, I think there are more Maxine Waters than there are like Dave Rubins out there. So.
Oh, for sure, no doubt about that.
So, one of the other topics I was discussing tonight, and maybe you can kind of weigh on this. Over the past couple weeks, I've gotten a lot of questions from older millennials, from baby boomers, from baby boomer conservatives asking why millennials are so liberal, and I think it has a lot to do with the education system. And just the fact that the left has infiltrated the mainstream media as to why millennials are so liberal. But what are kind of your thoughts on that as an older millennial, I guess?
Yeah, I think it has everything to do with education. I mean, you're teaching these kids that every single person is special. Everybody is a winner. You don't have to work hard in life to get anything. Everything's just going to come to you, and like it's even from like kindergarten and elementary school on up. It's just, let's see, what was I going to say? It's basically indoctrination. It gets a mindset into them that that everybody's equal, everybody's a winner. And I mean that's far from the truth, and it teaches kids these days that they no longer have to take responsibility for their own actions. I mean, you see videos of kids, like, I saw this one video of this kid screaming and kicking and screaming in a grocery store, and the mom was just ignoring it, and the cashier went up and gave the kid a sucker, and the kid finally stopped crying. But I'm like, it's basically, we've gotten into that kind of a cultural shift that bad behavior is actually being rewarded now. And it's now in parenting circles nowadays, it is now actually considered wrong to correct your child when they misbehave. You're supposed to reward them when they do good, but you're not supposed to correct them when they do wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've read that, and the weird thing is I've heard, that's the same theory. I don't know if you've ever owned a dog before, but that's what you're supposed to do when you're training dogs. You're supposed to praise a dog for having good behavior, but then you're supposed to just ignore bad behavior and not correct it at all. So it's weird to me that it's weird, but it's also not surprising that now I guess we're now using the same method for training dogs that we are for raising kids now. I guess that weirds me out. That weirds me out a bit. So, yeah. So, also, I think I don't know you, but in terms of dating, I think feminism has really ruined dating for millennials and whatnot too. Oh, go ahead.
I definitely agree, and is something interesting that I found out. They did a study, and they say that women who are more feminist, like more of the hardcore modern feminist, are actually statistically more likely to experience depression than women who aren't, because modern day feminism is all about denying everything that makes them feminine. You see them, those movements where they don't use feminine hygiene products anymore, and they don't shave anymore, and they don't feel like they have to wear makeup or anything. So basically, it's like the modern day feminist movement is basically removing everything about a woman that makes her feminine. It's trying to turn women into men. Yeah,
it's really bizarre. Well, not only that, but I mean, I don't know if you saw this video a few months ago. I think I sent it to you, but I guess I saw on InfoWars that the latest feminist ploy is to try and get NFL cheerleaders removed from the NFL because cheerleading is now demeaning. So, according to the feminists, despite the fact that most NFL cheerleaders make like $200, per special event, and they get paid like, $10 an hour at the games too, which isn't, and that's just for a rookie season too. So that's not bad, and and a lot of them go on to have like professional dance careers too, but hey, the feminists say it's sexist, so what do we know? So,
of course, a lot of those women actually enjoy it. I mean, they enjoy cheerleading. I mean, it's what they got themselves in shape, and they practiced, and they did something that they wanted to do.
Yeah, so it's just it's just completely ridiculous. I really should read you some of these comments, but then I'm kind of afraid to, as well, just because my audience, like me, they have a dirty sense of humor too, so, somewhat. So anyway, yeah. Ludwig said in the chat, he said modern day modern dating is a bummer. In my day, we just raved, and that's obviously, folks, that's just sarcasm. But yeah, well, that's the that's the big stereotype of patriarchy and the whole I guess male to female dating experience. I mean, the thing that really drives me crazy is the left is now pulling out these statistics like that, 4 out of 5 women on college campuses are going to get raped now. And it's like, no, that's not the, that's not the case at all. I mean, I'm sure you went to Regent University, right?
I did, yes.
How many rapes per day were did you see on the campus?
Oh, tons. It was happening everywhere, like every street corner, I think the 3 years I was there were maybe 6 or 7 reported sexual assaults in the 3 years that I was there.
Yeah. So that's like, that's like maybe 1.5, 2 per year.
So about 2 to 2.5 per year, and at that school there were about 20 or 30,000 students. So basically, and let's just say half of them were female, so that brings it down to 10 to 15,000. So each year, only 2 out of 15,000 women were sexually assaulted. That doesn't sound like 4 out of 5 to me.
Yeah, again, these stats are being made up. The other thing that drives me crazy, and this kind of goes back to the whole free speech thing on college campus, is there more and more of these college campuses. It seems they're so focused on diversity now and getting their diversity quotas filled that they're foregoing high school grades and extracurricular activities and transcripts and all that just to fulfill quotas now, which really drives me crazy on campus.
Yeah.
So, also,
I mean, like,
oh,
sorry.
No. What were you saying?
Diversity, like, people don't understand. Like, I mean, I know us conservatives do, but liberals don't understand how ridiculously racist diversity quotas are. You're basically forcing a college to accept certain students strictly because of their race.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, I mean, and it's not even so much race anymore. It's more of you have to ideologically agree with us, and whatnot. So you're also a big. I know you're also a big Second Amendment guy. As you mentioned. So, what do you make of David Hogg and this, current attempt to grab the guns? So.
Oh, David Hogg is irrelevant. He's a little whiny little high school kid who thinks he knows everything but doesn't.
Yeah, he is pretty irrelevant. I mean, so let me ask you this: do you think the left is like trying to stage all of these events in order to try and take away the Second Amendment, or what are your thoughts on a lot of that?
I don't think they're necessarily staged, but I do think that the left definitely capitalizes. Like the thing with the left so basically to push gun control. To be able to push gun control and get people to believe it, you need tragedies. So I would say the left actually dances on top of the babies, of the top of the bodies of dead children to push their gun control laws. Because without dead kids, there's no reason for them to push gun control. They use kids to try to strike at the emotional core of American citizens. And, I'm sure everybody's heard there, well, if this measure or that measure could just save the life of one child, we should do it. And they use children to push their cause. And without dead children, they have no cause to push.
Yeah, we hear that narrative all the time, and it's ridiculous. Now, I know you're somewhat of a gun owner yourself. I won't ask for specifics, but one thing that keeps one thing that I keep getting confronted with is, there's the gun owner, gun show loopholes. Now, as far as these current gun laws, as far as what the current gun laws are, can you kind of explain, what those are and why these quote unquote loopholes are ridiculous?
What do you mean by loopholes?
Well, like, the left keeps bringing up, like, this gun show loophole that, people can just walk into gun shows and,
the loophole.
Yeah.
So actually, this is actually kind of relevant because I'm in San Diego right now for a business trip, and there is there's a huge, massive gun show this weekend. And of course, liberals they're walking around the gun show with signs and picketing and yelling and all that, the normal stuff that liberals do when they want to try to get their way, try to bully people. So what the gun show actually did this weekend, they invited any anti-gun person in the area to come into the gun show, and if they can find any loophole or any illegality in that gun show, that the gun show will donate $10,000 to the charity of that person's choice. However, if that anti-gun person takes him up on a challenge and does not find anything illegal or any loophole, they have to agree to sit in a one-day gun safety class to learn about guns from people who run that gun show.
That's great. I find that fascinating. So, and just to clarify, Adam works in you work in IT, right? You're not part of the gun show.
No. I work IT, but I'm also in the military reserve. So.
Yes, you are. So, and.
But I will have to say, because I kind of have to, I do not speak on behalf of the military. I just am a member of the military. So.
Right. No, I get that. Well, still, thank you for your service. That is one thing I do kind of want to touch on real quick, not specifically with your service, but I mean, do you think? Do you think we're going to be having a big conflict in the Middle East soon, or can you not speak to that?
I don't see it happening.
So.
That's my personal educated opinion. I don't see us having some massive conflict. But what I do see maybe not a full-on civil war, but I see the potential for a conflict here in the U.S. Because here's the thing. This is going to go back to. I'm kind of going to circle back to the liberal violence, if that's okay.
Yeah. Please do.
So another couple stories. I'm sure everybody in the conservative circle knows who Michelle Malkin is.
Yes.
So she was actually eating breakfast or brunch at IHOP with her 4-year-old daughter this group of liberals came in and saw her. They went up to her. They started screaming at her and cursing at her while her daughter was eating breakfast right next to her. And Michelle said that they got so close to her that she could feel their breath on her neck. And they were literally screaming and shouting in her ear. There was another instance where, I forgot what state it was, there was a state attorney general who was a conservative who was basically went out to a movie with her husband, and there were liberals who gathered around her, started shouting at her and screaming, and a couple of the male protesters were pushing and shoving her husband to try to get her husband to respond with force back. Luckily he did, because he has, like, conservatives, we have a good head on our shoulders, so we're not crazy like the liberals are. But so luckily nothing happened, and they actually waited for her. So she went and saw the movie. When she got out of the movie, they were waiting in the parking lot for her and continued to shout insults and curse at her. So this is kind of a segue here, and I think eventually if the liberals keep it up like this, that one day they are going to mess with the wrong conservative and it's going to start something. Because, nobody's perfect. And while I would never advocate violence against another person willingly, unless it was in self-defense of my property, myself, or my family or loved ones, everybody has their breaking point. One of these days, conservatives are going to say, the hell with this, we've had enough.
Well, I think, you're not the first person to say that. I mean, I certainly hope a civil war isn't imminent, but I don't, I mean, you just don't know these days. And what's really frightening to me is now with society being so urbanized, I think which side would local governments be on, and which side would the police force be on? I mean, it could get really sticky here.
I do know the majority of the military will be on the conservative side. I mean, granted, the last 5 to 10 years there have been more liberals joining the military, but I think overall, if anything ever happened, the majority of the military would side with the right. Because as a service member, our oath is we swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so if the Constitution becomes under fire and if something ever happened, I think the military would go by their oath.
So how do you think, so this is the one thing I've always been curious about since people started bringing this up. People keep saying that there is going to be a civil war, and I can kind of see that happening. And by the way, the Attorney General, I'm being told, was Pam Bondi here in Florida. So. Oh,
okay. Yeah, I didn't know her name. That's good. Thanks.
Yeah, I should have known that since it happened here in my state. Although I am a Colorado native, just like Adam is. So, but by the way, go Broncos. Hopefully
go Broncos.
Hopefully they don't have a sucky season like last year. Although I didn't watch because of the flag kneeling thing. But anyway, no. But I am curious. How do you think a civil war would actually play out here in America? Do you think it would last very long?
I don't think it would last very long. Honestly, I think if one did start, I think the president would declare martial law, and any police or military loyal to that commander in chief would obey that and start going around and instituting that martial law. But I think if something did spark out, there would be a lot of bloodshed in the first 24 to 48 hours. So
my biggest concern with the civil war would not only be the bloodshed, But depending on who's in power, I would be concerned. Like I hope if I'm not. Now again, folks, I want to preface this by saying I hope a civil war doesn't break out. I want to preface this statement by just saying that.
Yep.
But if a civil war did break out, I would hope it would break out under Trump. While he's still in office, because if it were to break out under a liberal president, well then, I've joked on this show before, although there is an element of truth. Adam, I'm pretty sure that I'm on a database somewhere, and that you're on a database, and that Josh is. I'm pretty sure that there's a whole database of known conservatives that the government needs to look into.
They'd probably go if it was a liberal president. They'd probably go after veterans first, because the vast majority of military veterans are conservative, and most of them are gun owners. So I think military veterans would be the first group they would target.
So yeah, I mean that is my big concern is, hey, let's, like I said, I don't want anything to happen, but if the left were to start something and then a conservative were to respond, depending on who's president, it could whoever is president could wind up determining, which side gets persecuted. In this, scenario. And so, like I said, I would certainly hope that, I think Trump is actually more fair than people give him credit for when it comes to, matters of domestic, civility. I actually don't think he would persecute the entire left. But I do think that the entire left would persecute us if they had their president in power. So, i.e. Hillary Clinton. So, it, like I said, that is definitely a scary proposition. So.
Yeah, I hope that never happens. So.
Now,
I just see this violence with the left escalating, especially once we actually confirm Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court.
That is something I wanted to talk about. I was hoping we could bring it up on the American Watchman Roundtable this week, but since we don't have our other two panelists, I guess I'll ask you what are your thoughts on Kavanaugh personally?
Personally, I think he's a decent pick. He's not who I would have picked, but he's a good pick. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I don't know much about Kavanaugh, himself, to really have an opinion. But I think that Trump has reasoning for picking Kavanaugh, and I know that there are people who are hesitant to like Kavanaugh, but there were people who were hesitant to like Gorsuch as well, and yet Gorsuch wound up being arguably one of the most conservative judges we've had in a while. So, and hopefully, Ginsburg will retire and Trump can replace her on the Supreme Court. So,
and yeah, that would give us a solid 6-3 majority, which would be amazing.
Yeah, and what would even be more impressive in my book is if Trump nominated another female justice to replace her.
I think he would. I honestly think he will.
Yeah. So.
But of course, the left will go absolutely crazy because they hate all women except the women that subscribe to their ideology.
Right. Yeah.
If Trump appoints a woman, they'll be upset because it wasn't a woman that they liked.
Yeah, and then they'll go violent. Well, I mean, that's how a lot of this violence, over the past few weeks started. Actually, was because of reaction to the Kavanaugh thing. Fractor, or am I just reading into that?
There was some violence at the nomination. However, let's see, where was it? So I saw a picture of this woman who was proud so she had all these signs, these protest signs in her house, and she showed 4 different signs. It had the names of 4 different potential justices for Trump, and it said stop, and then whoever the person's name was. So they already had protest signs available for whoever Trump nominated. So it's not about who it is. It's all about Trump. As long as Trump is nominating them, they oppose whoever that is. Like Trump could appoint a liberal, and they would say the judge is not liberal enough. So,
well, that would certainly be the case. And the thing that amazes me is Trump is pretty liberal on like a lot of social issues, and yet, the left thinks he's literally Hitler. And, that going back to free speech and leftist violence, that is another thing that concerns me, and this kind of ties into the whole Civil War thing, too. All these leftists like to say that, Trump is literally Hitler, or Milo Yiannopoulos is literally Hitler, or, someone said I supported, Hitler's ideals, which was, ridiculous. But, the one thing that I can see happening is, I think one day there could be a potential for someone with, Hitler-like traits to take power, and, and most likely they'll be from the left, but they won't be shouting and, being loud and obnoxious on social media. They'll be very charismatic and very smooth and very charming.
Oh, of course.
They'll be non-aggressive at first. So, and that's what a lot of people forget with the history of Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. Hitler was certainly not Trump, who can be loud and obnoxious and sometimes obscene. But Hitler, for back in the day, he was very poised and very charismatic. So, any more story? I know you said you had a couple of stories regarding violence of the left. So, do you have any more stories or any more events that you can think of regarding to that topic?
Not that I can think of a moment, but I'm waiting to see further incidences coming up. So. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, there we go. So this happened at there's some kind of festival or something. By the way, for all of us conservatives here, in San Diego this week, and it's a massive Pride Fest. So there's like rainbow crap everywhere, literally on every street corner. The city even put rainbow banners on all the public transportation and all that stuff.
So you're already having a gay old time in San Francisco then. So
San Diego.
Oh, San Diego.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean, San Diego is a pretty gay town in of itself too, right? So
not Not really, though. Like, San Diego, out of all the major cities in California, San Diego is actually the least liberal out of all the major California cities.
Yeah, well, that's not saying much. By the way, Adam, I do have to ask though. In terms of liberal politics and whatnot, how is my dear city of Denver? Since I left, I've heard that they've declined. And that they've gone more and more left. What's Denver doing right now in terms of politics?
Well, Denver itself it's liberal. It's a liberal city. However, Colorado, we actually have a chance at turning our state red again for the governorship. So we have a governor election this year, and the idiot that was in office now, he can no longer run again because he's reached his term limit. So there will be a new governor this year. I'm just hoping that the conservative guy can win out.
Who is the conservative guy? Is Cory Gardner running for anything serious, or?
I think he's just Senate.
Oh, okay.
It's Walker Stapleton is the primary candidate for the Republicans.
Oh yeah, I think I might have met him a long time ago when I was a kid. Had he held office previously in Colorado politics? Do you remember?
Walker Stapleton, I think he did something. I don't remember what it was though.
He sounds familiar. I know that. So.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Was he a businessman or anything like that?
I think he was. I do know that he is a Walker Stapleton. He's a fifth generation Colorado resident. So
I'm a sixth generation native. So
dang, more than me. I'm a second generation.
Yeah, well, my family goes back a long ways, and people are going to understand why I wanted to leave, but it was just because of the winters. That was my reason for getting out. That and I am curious. I think we've talked about this before, but I think now it's gotten a little bit more in control. But do you see the marijuana bubble bursting in Denver soon? Or?
The what bubble?
The weed bubble, the ganja bubble, the Mary Jane, the marijuana bubble.
Oh no! In Colorado, the marijuana industry is very much thriving. So,
well, I've heard rumors that Trump is thinking of federalizing medical marijuana. So,
yep, and that's a huge. So politically, I believe that marijuana should be legalized. Personally,
as do I.
I don't like marijuana. I don't like marijuana. I'll never partake in marijuana, even after the military. Because military, I can obviously. Even after the military, I just won't, because it's a personal choice. But I think if somebody wants to be able to use it, they should. And there are so many benefits. Like CBD oil has been known to treat certain illnesses, even treat like seizures or people with tremors or Parkinson's has helped treat that. The world of renewable plastics and paper, like hemp paper and hemp plastic. Hemp plastic is actually stronger than petroleum plastic, but is completely 100% biodegradable, unlike petroleum plastic. And they've experimented with making hemp-based plastic door panels for cars, and have found out that some of these door panels, if manufactured correctly using hemp plastic, can actually be stronger than steel, but it's lighter than plastic, regular plastic.
Yeah. I mean,
so all the medical and all the research implications, I'm all about that.
Yeah, as am I, and I as my audience knows, I've smoked it twice. I think it's a little overrated personally. Although I haven't smoked with any of the listeners here, and I do know I have a couple of pot smokers here in the audience, and I'm sure that they would all say, well, you haven't smoked with me yet, but I do think that there certainly are benefits. I think I think what's interesting is if Trump does decide to federally legalize it, I think that there are a lot of people who smoke it because it's edgy and it's against the man, kind of, and so once it gets legalized, that incentive will kind of be taken away, which that will be interesting. But I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm asking in terms of marijuana. If it does become federally legalized, do you think Colorado would lose that that kind of boom that they've had due to marijuana, or do you think it would just continue to grow?
I think initially Colorado will lose the boom. However, once it becomes legal nationwide, I think I'm a big free market person, and I believe the free market will level itself out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's only, I'm hoping that the cost of living will go down in Denver for sure.
One can only hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have looked at moving back and once or twice, and I with the cost of living, of course, once Hickenlooper gets out of office, and once a conservative is back in office, hopefully that will help things too. But real quick on the non-political front, I just read a headline recently that Kathleen Kennedy is out as the head of Lucasfilm.
Yes, she is, and I am very happy with that.
So yeah, I know you're a big Star Wars fan. So kind of just switching topics into the non-political venue. What do you think of the new Star Wars movies, and what are you hoping for the future now that Kathleen Kennedy is out?
I'm very optimistic about J.J. Abrams' take on Episode 9. I think it has the potential to be the best Star Wars movie yet.
Yeah, well, that's not saying much since since Last Jedi was such a bomb. So.
Oh, I loved The Last Jedi.
Really?
Oh yeah, I liked it. There were some things there. I had some criticisms about it, like how they wrote Rose's character and how they made Holdo into this purple-haired feminist, whatever. And then of course, Princess Leia flying through space, and then the whole casino scene. I think they could have done away with the entire casino scene.
Yeah, I think so too. I will say this. I didn't hate it like a lot of people did, but I can certainly see where people have gripes with it. Did you see Solo, the Solo film?
The what?
Did you see the Han Solo film?
I loved it.
Yeah, I actually loved it as well. I do think that the saving grace with that movie was definitely the fact that Ron Howard took things over. So yeah,
right, he's a good director.
Yeah, it'll be interesting once JJ is back at the helm, and I hear that they're making they're making a Kenobi movie too, so I'm looking forward to that. So.
Oh, for sure.
This is a good comment though. My one of the listeners says, in episode 9, Ray wakes up to discover that 7 and 8 were horrible, and goes back to redo 7 and 8. So I mean, look, I think. I mean, do the new Star Wars movie have problems? Yes, but are they Jar Jar Binks bad? No. So.
Well, Rose is almost as bad as Jar Jar. And the thing I don't get about Rose is, they made her character so plain and non-compelling. Like, if you look at the actress that plays Rose versus Rose's character, they look completely different.
Yeah.
And I think they did that on purpose. I think because Rose in the movie, she has that look of a social justice warrior.
Yeah.
So and the actress is far from that.
Right. Yeah. I saw that. I don't know. I mean, some people have argued that C-3PO is a pretty plain character, but C-3PO and R2-D2 were both kind of like the comedy relief, for the first 3 movies. So. Yeah, and I think Ludwig in the chat just said 7 at best was a remake. Well, so
it was a remake of 4, but I mean they did introduce some new elements. Like, in Star Wars, they've never done a thing where a stormtrooper broke away and became his own person. Right.
Yeah. They've never done that. I kind of, me personally, I felt like the potential for the Captain Phasma character was, they had so much potential to just really develop that character, and they missed out on it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my other big complaint was, they kind of introduced her character in 7. We were hoping to get more details about her in 8, and nothing happened. In fact, she was killed off, in the end scene, and now I guess we're not going to hear anything about her. Same thing with Snoke, and yes, unless J.J. Abrams comes up with like a plot where he's somehow not dead, but it is what it is. So
yeah.
All right, Adam. Well, we're near 10 o'clock and near the end of the show. Do you have anything that you want to promote real quick? Where can we find you on Twitter? Are you on social media? Where can we find you?
I'm definitely on social media. You can find me on Twitter at AJHill_2A.
So and are you on Instagram too?
I am. Let me look at my Instagram so I can tell you guys my handle here. I don't have it off the top of my head. Oh, it's the same one. So Instagram is also AJHill_2A.
Alrighty. Yeah, and and so check those out. And Adam also contributes to the American Watchman Roundtable podcast, which usually would air Saturday nights at 9 Eastern, except we did an extended show tonight, But anyway, Adam, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I know that we'll talk soon here, probably in the next few days or so. So
yeah, definitely.
Thanks for coming on, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the Whitfield Report. I want to thank you all for participating in the program, and if you like the show, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube and share the video with people. And as always, you can download the audio podcast version of this later on. And if you want to support the show, you can subscribe on Patreon. And please have a good night. God bless, and God save this great nation. And I'll be back next week, ladies and gentlemen. Good night, and God bless.